Excellent.
All right then. Welcome everyone to another main AMA. We've got the Stead team. Steed, how do you pronounce it, Mitchell?
We usually pronounce it Stead.
Yeah. So we've got the Stead team here today. They've been building for quite a while. We've actually had them for an AMA. I think it was last year, and they're ready to launch now. So we're going to get into what they've been building over the last few months. So do you want to just give yourself a brief introduction?
Yes, why don't I go ahead? Firstly, how's my audio? Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound
Yeah.
great.
Perfect.
Okay, good, good, good. Don't want to have any more Wi-Fi issues. So, my name is Mitchell Suchner. I am the co-founder of Stead. It is we are a real-world asset token. So what we're doing is we're basically tokenizing floating assets. It's a little bit like some of these other projects that tokenize real estate. Some of them tokenize things like stocks and bonds and securities and things like that. And some of them tokenize gold. But the closest example to what we're doing is the projects that tokenize real estate. We're kind of doing the same thing, but with floating real estate. So when I say floating real estate specifically, I mean we're tokenizing access to and the use of things like fishing boats, transport boats, salmon cages, milkfish cages, so any kind of fish cage that's used to grow up fish at an industrial scale, and even floating houses, which are used by some beach resorts. So that's kind of the long and short of what our project is. I can go into a lot more detail during this interview, but yeah, I think that sums it up in short. And then also here on the Stead account is our community manager, Jesse.
How you doing, Jesse?
Hello, guys. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah, perfect, mate.
Yeah, so we are happy to talk with you guys again, and we hoping to have space right today.
And you, mate. So let's get into it. So Mitchell, do you want to just give us a brief description of how you got into like DeFi and stuff like that, and how how long have you been in crypto, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like it was ingrained into my soul a little bit. Like that's a weird way of putting it, right? But it's like when I was in college, I found out about like blockchain technology and cryptocurrency, and I was already kind of like a techie nerdy guy, I guess. I was going in for computer information systems degree. And so, all the people I was hanging out with were like making games in Python and stuff like that. So I found out about blockchain. I immediately thought, wow, this is really cool. It's really interesting tech. But then I found out about the use cases and the direction of like this is going to give us financial freedom. This is going to liberate us from banks and overregulation and government policy, inflation, things like that, right? And so as soon as I found out about the real world use case, not just being something that's an instrument that can make your life better, but like it has almost like an intrinsic goal of making your life better. And so when I figured that out about crypto, I got really, really deeply invested. Right, I figured, wow, this is a really big deal. This is actually a really great thing that's going to help people all over the world down the line. And I think that DeFi is probably one of the purest examples and maybe one of the best accomplishments of blockchain technology. We're not just creating a decentralized currencies anymore. We're creating decentralized securities. We're creating decentralized insurance. We're creating decentralized mortgages and fractionalized ownership. And in our case, we're creating decentralized tickets. So like a ticket that you can use to rent time at a concert, for an example. We're basically creating tickets that you can use to rent time with floating assets. So it's kind of a different way of doing it by creating tickets to rent time with something, but it's still effectively that ticket is now collateralized by the value of the underlying asset, which right now is mostly fishing boats, tuna fishing boats. But
Yeah, I love that,
yeah,
mate. And obviously, I'm invested in quite a few RWA projects, and I think one of the first ones was like a real estate one. and I've been with them for about 2 years, and they're doing really well. So
Yeah.
I do think tokenized assets are going to be one like a real big hit, especially in this coming bull run. When I don't think many retail investors are actually, I don't think it's started yet, to be honest. But once the retail investors come in, and people realise you can actually own fractionalised real estate and stuff like that, because it makes it hard, doesn't it? A lot of young people these days, they struggle to get mortgages, they struggle to get, to get onto the ladder. It's really hard. So that's what I really love, this sort of stuff, and that's why I'm quite excited to get into what you're building. But do you want to ask anything?
I mean, it seems, that's such a crazy idea. Like, how did this even come about? Like, how did you think about floating property on the water?
Right. No, that's a good question. So you mentioned before that it's getting harder for people, especially young people in Western, like high inflation countries and Western countries. It's hard for them now to get onto the property ladder, and it's hard for them to get a mortgage. And we experienced that firsthand. We actually developed we're partnered with, we have a sister company, right? So Stead is the cryptocurrency company. ArcPad, that some people have seen on our Twitter account or social media, that's actually the marine infrastructure company that we're partnered with, and we're kind of like joined together companies. But so the point is, ArcPad developed this floating house to be used by beach resorts in the Philippines because they have an island called Boracay. It's got a huge, like 2 mile long white sand beach, and it's just lined with rows and rows and rows of resorts. They basically bought up all the beach property, all the coastal property in the area already is owned by somebody. Yeah, and sometimes like competing claims over property, even because there's been some title issues. So we came along, we said, okay, what can we do? We can build a floating house. We can take this already very profitable area that's a very popular hot tourist destination, and we can physically expand it by just adding more real estate into the water. And not only did we build a floating house, but we built one that you can actually grow coral reefs on the bottom of it. It's designed to be a fish attractor, so it increases the fish population in that local region, and it does a whole bunch of other really cool stuff. So as cool as the technology is behind floating infrastructure, we go to a bank, we say, hey, we have a resort. They want to put like 50% down and then 50% on a mortgage. And they say, oh, great, okay, we'll do a mortgage for your property. Where's the property? We go, oh, it's in the ocean. Oh, well, that so that's a problem. Right? They don't want to give mortgages for properties in the ocean. So to make a long story short, we realized where banks fail, blockchain succeeds. So why don't we go on chain and just decentralize the funding process? And instead of going with a conventional mortgage or loan structure, we went with ticketizing, with creating tickets to utilize floating assets because it's just a simpler way of doing it. And so we ended up kind of spinning up this sister company, this other company, ArcPad, and now they're kind of joined at the hip, and that's what we're doing here today. Is it's not, it started off with a floating house for a resort, and it has expanded into, again, any kind of boat, any kind of ship, fishing ships, transport ships, and fish cages, and we do have a fish cage in the water now as well. All of these things are assets. You can put a value on it. You can say, I need this much money, this much funding to construct it, to buy it, whatever. And so the platform works for all of those different types of assets.
I did see on the website that about the fish cages. Is that for breeding fish, right?
It can sometimes be used for breeding fish. Those cages are actually quite advanced. What most people use the fish cages for is they'll have a big pond on land where they will grow. They'll have like breeding pairs, and then they'll lay eggs, and the eggs will hatch into like tadpoles or like little tiny baby fish called fingerlings in the ponds. They'll take a big net and they'll scoop up all of the tiny fish and then bring them out to this cage out in the ocean, which is, because a pond is maybe 3 feet deep, 4 feet deep, but these cages can be like 20 feet deep, and they're huge all the way around. So it has a lot more volume, and it's also cheaper to put a cage in empty water than to keep digging ponds over and over again. So what they do is they grow all the baby fish on land, and then they
Right.
put them in a cage in the water, right, and then they grow them to adulthood, and then they harvest and sell them.
That's amazing, and I just want to quickly touch on to one thing as well, because one of the most exciting things, obviously, my old co-host DBS is actually in the room. Obviously, he's doing his own thing now. We wish him all the best with his radio. But me and DBS was asking you about you can actually create electric or something like that, can't you, with these houses as well? So you can actually get free electricity and stuff like that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, there's multiple ways of doing this with floating houses. So the first thing that you can do is you can just put solar panels on the top, and because you're in the water, there's never any shade. When you're in the Philippines or you're near the equator, there's actually more concentrated sunlight in this area of the world, so solar panels operate at a higher efficiency. But you can use solar panels on land. What you can also do in the water that you can't do on land is you can attach wave generators to the sides of these floating structures, and as the waves go by and very gently rock the platform side to side, that can also generate free electricity. So there's multiple ways of getting basically free electricity with these things.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. It's absolutely amazing. So let's get into this because obviously you have done a few launch pads, haven't you? And didn't you sell out like $350,000 over the weekend?
Yeah, just over this weekend, we sold out all of the tokens that we put up on the launch pads. It was two different launch pads, all of them sold out before their time was up, and it was about $350,000. We were selling the tokens at like 70 cents a piece, and we've only got one more sale like this that's coming up. It's actually going to be going up tomorrow, and we'll post a link to it on our Twitter. We're going to have like another 120,000, and I expect it will probably sell out pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well done, mate. Well done. But so, just do you want to get into like, a simple side of what brings the value to the token? Because I do remember you saying last time that you are actually introducing like an inflation rate or something like that. So it actually, I can't remember exactly what you said, but you're actually going to to stop the inflation hurting the token.
Right. So to get into the tokenomics, well, firstly, let me discuss the real world assets and how they relate to the token. So what's going to happen? I'm going to say this kind of like a step-by-step process. So the first thing that happens is, let's say a fisherman wants a new, larger fishing boat than the one that they have right now. They're going to come to us and they're going to apply to be something called an operator. So we're going to vet them. We're going to do background checks. We're going to make sure they don't have any outstanding debts, that they have a history of successfully operating floating assets, in this case, a fishing boat, right? How long have you been a fisherman? How much fish do you catch in an average season? Something like that. And so once we have proof or evidence of the financial viability, we write up a financial viability proposal. And assuming that they pass, we will list their floating asset on our marketplace along with the financial viability proposal so people can see the numbers behind it, why we believe it'll be profitable, things like this. And then once it's listed up on the marketplace, people can come along. It's called the marketplace because there's many different, I guess all of the listings are selling the same thing. They're selling Stead tokens, but there's many different floating assets like floating houses, fishing boats that are on the marketplace. You can pick one out, you can click on it, you can read all of the information that you put into this particular floating asset, and then you can use stables to mint more Stead tokens. And when you're minting more Stead tokens, it's kind of like you're buying tickets to use this floating asset in the future. So what's going to happen then is those stables that you spent go to the operator or go to a boat builder directly in some cases. They build the boat, and then the operator can now use the boat and profitably operate it, which is what they're called, an operator. And then in order for them to continue to use the boat, they have to rent time with it. And the way that they rent time with it is by buying back and burning the Stead tokens that were initially minted. And so in this way, it's true that you can keep minting Stead tokens forever. They don't have any maximum supply, but they're net deflationary against the dollar. Because the way that it works out is the operator has to burn more Stead tokens or a greater dollar value of Stead tokens than were initially minted. And so that constantly decreases the supply, that constantly pushes the price of the Stead tokens up forever, basically, because these real world assets are actively pushing it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. It's
And
it's
and
really
is
Sorry, you go ahead, Bert.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say because I noticed on the website, obviously it says initially one stead will cost $1, and you're saying in these, obviously you've just sold 350,000 at 70 cents. So this is how you're achieving it, basically.
Right. So right now you can buy it to 70 cents, and then after tomorrow that's going to be gone pretty much permanently. Because the way that it works with minting tokens is the operators have to buy back and burn more tokens than were initially minted, right? That part is true. But there's also a second mechanism that's built into the tokenomics, which is what you're talking about. Initially the cost mint will be $1, yada yada. The reason that we phrased it like that is because we built in a second mechanism called the base price. And so the base price is basically the minimum cost to mint. So what's going to happen is if Stead tokens release at $1 and then the price goes up to $2, the cost to mint is going to be $2. But if the price goes down to 80 cents, then the cost to mint new tokens stays at $1 because the cost to mint is different than like buying on Uniswap. That's the cost to mint new tokens. So what that means is that you cannot mint below this price. And not only is there a base price that prevents the price of the token from ever going too low, but that base price increases by 0.9% every 30 days, which translates to about 11.5% roughly per year. Also, it's almost 1% per month, right? So
Yeah, I get this now.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
really clever, that is. And as like more or less, as long as you've got people renting your like infrastructure, it's always going to go up, isn't it? That more or less.
Yeah.
The more people that are using your floating houses, the fish boxes, etc. And can you just touch on, have you got any partners like or people waiting to use all this like infrastructure?
Yeah, yeah, we do. So we received about $600,000 in asset requests since we started this whole thing. Most of those have actually come from fish cage operators. Those guys I was telling you about, where they'll buy the fingerlings or they'll grow their own fingerlings on land and then they'll put them into a fish cage. So most of the people that have requested money have been requesting money or requesting to become operators of these fish cages. But we've had a lot of fishermen. We've had a handful of resorts looking for coastal property. And then, of course, we also operate our own floating assets. We operate a small fleet of fishing boats, so we'll be listing some of our own fishing boats for funding on the platform as well. So, but in terms of like third-party operators, people that are not part of our company but want to partner with us, the total amount of assets they've requested was around $600,000.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also, I was just reading something then. Well, is this limited to the Philippines, or are you going to branch out to different countries?
No, this is not limited to the Philippines. Actually, now that I mention it, I'm only talking about when I say that 600 number, I'm actually only talking about the Filipino companies. It kind of slipped my mind that we had the American partnerships as well. So there is one company in the US, I believe that they're based in Florida, and they wanted to get some floating houses put in. It was either Tampa Bay, or it might have been near Panama City, which is a place kind of like in the Panhandle of Florida. And they were requesting funding for floating houses to put up on Airbnb. So right off the bat, we're looking at operating in the Philippines and also potentially Florida. But within this year, we're probably going to branch out to either Indonesia or Singapore first. And from there, we want to expand to all of Southeast Asia, in addition to parts of the US, mostly the developed coastal areas like Florida, California, Texas, maybe Louisiana, places like that.
Yeah, that's amazing, to be honest. And what I love about it is, like you said, if people want to like get funding or rent your stuff, they have to mint the tokens and burn them. They can't just buy them from the market. Is that correct?
Well, so they don't necessarily have to mint and burn. They can buy them from somebody else that is already minted. So for example, if there's a fishing boat that gets listed and they need $100,000 of funding to get this fishing boat, and we collect 100,000 stables, right? Then the 100,000 stables are then used to buy the fishing boat. But the guy that's operating that fishing boat over a certain period of time has to burn, let's say, 200,000 USDT worth of the Stead token. So he could go to the marketplace again. He could mint that money and then burn it, or he could just buy it off of Uniswap. Because on Wednesday we'll be listing on Uniswap. We'll be putting in $120,000 of liquidity initially, and we'll be locking that liquidity for 2 years as well.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And also, I was just going to ask, the obviously the launch is going to happen. Is it? Do you say Wednesday? I'm just reading now.
So what's going to happen is around this time tomorrow, we're going to be listing on our final launch pad. There's going to be a short window for people to buy at the 70-cent price. And then the next day, it's going to go up on Uniswap, and it will be initially setting the price at $1, and then of course the market takes over. But we expect that it's just going to go up from there. So basically, the last chance that people have to buy at 70 cents will be around this time tomorrow.
And where will that take place?
That is going to be on the Bonsai launch pad. And maybe Jesse here could post some kind of a link to them so you guys could get a look at their Twitter profile. But we'll also be posting on our Twitter a direct link to it.
Yeah, if you can, because he's a speaker, you can actually pin it in the nest so people can actually see. Or if it's on your profile now, I can pin it in the nest so people can see. And what's the tokenomics going to be on? Is there a tax on the token, or how is it working?
No, absolutely no tax. No, well, I was gonna say, there's no inflation that goes to us, right? Like there's no inflation that goes to our company wallet or anything like that. Any minting that happens is happening on the marketplace. So there's no tax, there's no hidden inflation, there's nothing like that, right? It's all very straightforward.
Yeah, that makes sense. So obviously, you said you're going to launch. So it's Wednesday. So you're going to launch on Friday. Roughly what time?
We will be going up on Uniswap. Well, wait, hold on. So is this for the launch pad or is this for listing on Uniswap?
Yeah, for the actual launch, like listing on Uniswap.
Right. So for that, actually, I need to recheck my calendar. It's either going to be 2 days from now, but like an hour later, or it might be 3 hours later. I actually need to check my calendar again. But again, around this time, roughly about 2 days from now.
Yeah, it's really exciting, to be honest. Go. Have you got anything?
I'm just intrigued. I really love these sort of projects that are quite unique. I just been looking through the website, just thinking what it would be like to live on one of these things.
Right. No, it will be it's gonna be fantastic. I mean, if I can live on one, I definitely will live on one. It's self-sustaining, it's gonna produce its own electricity, it's gonna produce its own water. It physically, so when it comes to the arc pads, the seasteads, right? These floating houses physically connect together with each other so that they can share resources like fresh water, electricity, fiber optic cables, they can have their own internal internet systems. This is why we're working with resorts in Boracay to build a sort of floating resort that and of course every house actually has 2 stories. So we're building the whole thing. Not only are these floating houses on the water, but they're 2-story floating houses. So they're double the space for the resorts. Now that might not sound impressive, but when you understand naval architecture, when you understand like the tricky stuff that you have to get around to get a house floating in the water in the first place, making it 2 stories is actually really, really impressive. It's a lot harder than you think, believe me.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this, I can see that you could also, if you wanted to, you could move. You could move the house along the water somewhere else, which is crazy. But what about plumbing and stuff? How does that work?
So actually, again, if you're looking at those pictures, then you can see there's kind of like these columns going down into the water, right? Those things are called spars because they're either hollow or they're filled with kind of like an EPS foam or a styrofoam. So that way they can never flood and you can never sink. It's a safety feature. That's kind of the idea behind spars.
Right, right.
Right. And so inside of those spars, those big column chamber things, there are it's either just going to be a simple barrel, or in some of the design iterations, we have just a full septic tank with like a digestive chambers and different chambers to help with managing waste. And so there's going to be chambers for septic storage, chambers for freshwater storage, potentially chambers for fuel storage like oil or diesel. If you want to run a generator and have enough fuel for 3 years, you could store that. It's got like this built-in storage underneath the platform that the house sits on, and then underneath those storage chambers, you go down under the water, it's going to have a big cage that wraps around the bottom of the structure. And the reason it has that big cage or this big net that wraps around the structure is because it can double as a fish cage. So we've got these fish cages in the water already. We know how to operate them. So we took the floating houses and we basically turned them into fish cages. So you can grow your own food while you're producing your own electricity, and then use that electricity to desalinate salt water and produce your own fresh water. So you got your food, your electricity, your water. Now you just set up Starlink, you've got everything.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, honestly, it's amazing. So, how much are these? How much do they cost to actually produce these ones?
These floating houses, the ones meant for resorts, are going to be less than $200,000, which is a pretty good price. And I mean, compared to land-based real estate right now, that's actually very cheap. So that is the price that we're producing them for in the Philippines. They wouldn't be much more expensive if you're in the US or you're in Singapore, anywhere in Southeast Asia, and you guys want to buy some from us. We're selling the houses, the floating houses themselves. You can contact us. It's really not that expensive to ship internationally. Maybe like 205K, 210K. So yeah, but you have to have a place to put it, somewhere in the water that you're allowed to anchor.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you say because you're in the sea, you actually can you don't pay taxes or something like that? Is that something to do with the jurisdiction?
Yeah, it depends on the local government usually. Like if you're in a place like San Francisco, well, actually, I'm not sure about San Francisco. My understanding about a place like San Francisco Bay was that they might have rules about who's allowed to anchor where, and some people might have to pay anchoring fees, and that could be the case near some major cities. But a lot of the time, you just go right outside of the jurisdiction of the major city, and you can drop anchor pretty much anywhere for free all the time. So it depends on where you live.
Yeah, it's amazing.
How do you get the bin men out to take you?
Well, you might want a boat.
Yeah, honestly, really impressive, really impressive. So, like you said, the last time to get into the sale is tomorrow, and it's 0.7. And end of the day, you can't really go below that. Like at the end of the day, if you've got a base price at $1, obviously you'll probably get is it vested the pre-sale, or how is it working?
Yeah, so all of the pre-sales that we've already done are vested, I believe, for 6 months, and the final one we'll be doing tomorrow will also be vested for 6 months.
Yeah, that's good as well. It gives you time to actually generate like your properties and start bringing in income and stuff like that. Yeah, that sounds really good. I'm definitely going to have a look at getting into the pre-sale tomorrow. Um, have you got the link? Because no one's pinned it up in the nest. Or tell you what, I can always retweet it later off my page for people that are interested. Or if you want to jump into the main Telegram, you can post the links there as well.
Okay, sure, I'd appreciate it. And yeah, actually, there was something I also wanted to talk about a little bit because you guys were talking about like the different floating assets, the using the floating house as a fish cage. I brought that up. Um, since the last time that we talked, there was another asset that we put in the water. I think, if I remember correctly, we put this in the water. Yeah, I think it was just last week. So I just want to talk about this for a quick second because this will appear on our marketplace. This will be one of the assets that are collateralizing the token in the very near future here. It's something that we call a hexafarm, and that's because it's a fish cage kind of shaped like a hexagon. But what we did with it, and I want to say this because it's very interesting, is we took a cage in the middle of this fish cage. There's like a smaller cage. The fish grow in there. Then we put a larger cage around that that kind of holds it. Imagine like a big bowl holding a small bowl inside of it, right? Inside of between the space between those two cages, we have ropes covered with seaweed that we're starting to grow out right now. Those put more oxygen in the water that cause the fish to grow faster. And then below the seaweed at the bottom of these two cages are a bunch of little shrimp nests, and that allows shrimp to come out and eat the waste that's dropped by the fish, which is basically fish droppings, but that's what shrimp eat. So the shrimp will actually actively clean the water and stop pollutants from spreading to the nearby areas of the water. The seaweed will put more oxygen into the water, and the seaweed can also be harvested and ground up and turned into fish feed. So you don't need to buy fish feed from somebody else. So I don't have any pictures. There's nothing we can post right now, I think. But I just wanted to say that this is one of the cooler new things that we're putting in the water right now. So also expect to see that on our platform.
That,
Yeah,
that's
awesome.
that, yeah, awesome, man, awesome. And have you got? Do you have to have any regulations like for governments? Have you actually spoke to the Philippine government and had to get permission and stuff, or how does it work regulatory wise?
So when it comes to the floating house, it's kind of up to the resorts. Like if it's along a piece of coastline and it's that resort that owns that particular piece of coastline, it's somewhat up to them. They have to talk to the Department of Natural Resources, but for the most part, the resorts that own land on this particular island already know how things work, and the environmental landscape is, we kind of leave it mostly up to them because they're the ones that are buying it, but we do know the rules and we know where we're allowed to anchor. Like for example, our prototype, we anchored that one kind of a little ways away from the airport, just off the coast from there, and that's, you know, we talked with the captain of the local government unit and he said that that was fine. But when it comes to the hexafarm that I talked about, the fish cage that also grows seaweed and shrimp and can grow a bunch of other things mixed together with like its own ecosystem, we showed that to the government initially, and they actually liked it so much that they wanted to buy some from us. And we ended up meeting with the mayor, or no, sorry, we didn't meet with the mayor. We met with I think it was the president of the fish port in that area. And he said that he wanted us to put a bunch of these in the water in his fish port area. And what you can actually do with these fish cages is, because it's like two floating structures kind of wrapped around each other, you can build a platform between them, and you can put another floating house. It's much smaller than the main floating house, but you can actually build like smaller floating houses all connected in a ring around these fish cages. So we've actually kind of got like two different floating house products in a way. And the guy at the fish port really loved that, and he said, "Oh yeah, build some of these for us. We want to list them on Airbnb." So they're in favor of what we're doing.
Wow, for that, mate, honestly, really impressive, mate. Really impressive, man. Um, I've got a few questions. Obviously, for people that are buying the token that obviously don't want to use it to, get funding, etc. What will be the reason for holding the token? Will you have like revenue share, or will you have staking, or how will it work for the holders to benefit from the token? Not for people that aren't going to use them to actually buy infrastructure.
So right now, as soon as we list on Uniswap, there will be a liquidity pool where you'll be able to stake your LP tokens to get more rewards in the form of more stead. So that's where you'll be able to stake it initially. But over time, we plan on introducing more. I'm going to call them features, because I can't talk about this right now. It isn't even on our roadmap currently. We have to update the roadmap, but we have other things coming out that will allow people to stake stead tokens for other types of rewards. And I'm just going to leave it vague at the moment.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. Obviously, I don't want to put you on the spot. 'Cause people have just asked me. That's all. But yeah, that's what I love about these sort of projects, because at the end of the day, because it's so unique, there's always going to be things that you can think of to make it better. The more successful you get, and obviously you can, people could offer, percentage of their revenue from the fishing and stuff like that in future, and stuff like that, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and one of the things that we are planning on is a decentralized emergency fund, which kind of acts a little bit like, well, it's very similar to an insurance product, but it's different. And so what would actually happen is either the people who are renting their boats from us or really any operator of any fishing vessel or any floating asset on a case-by-case basis can apply for emergency fund access. So they will make payments in the form of stead every 30 days. Those payments would go into a pool that people who are holding stead tokens would be staked in, and then a portion of those payments just go into the pool and kind of build up the emergency fund, and a portion of the payments would go to people who are staking in that pool as rewards, and then a very small portion we're planning on having it get burned. But again, when it comes to this emergency fund, it's the kind of thing where, like, if there's a typhoon or if there's a storm or if a boat is damaged while it's out at sea, something like that, then because they've been making these payments on the emergency fund, they would be entitled to draw some money back out, do repairs to the vessel, and then put it back to sea again right away, so they can keep making payments into the emergency fund in the future. So that's one of the uses that Stead may have, but we're still working through the technicalities and the legalities of how exactly we'll be doing that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've got another question, mate. Sorry, I don't know how it works in like with your sort of regulatory rules over there. But what would happen if they stop paying for the use of the boat and stuff, but refuse to give it you back and stuff like that? How would that work?
So what Stead is doing right now as a company is whenever a floating asset is purchased or constructed or whatever, that floating asset is registered in the name of that company, right? But it's supposed to be ideally being operated by third-party operators, so it's being used in the most optimal possible way. So an operator comes to us, they say, we need a boat. We own the boat and we rent it out to them for a certain amount of time until they've fulfilled their obligations and they've burned a lot of stead tokens. And then we basically sell it to them for like $1 or something like that. So it's kind of like a lease to own basis. But that means that if they stop paying, you don't need to go and like repossess someone's house. It's in their name. The boat is already in the name of the company. So there's basically no hoops that you have to jump through to go and repossess the boat. You just send somebody, you take the boat, you yank it back. Okay, this is ours now because you missed a payment, last month. And then once it's taken back, you find another operator, you give it to them, and you say, make your obligations. Don't be like the last guy, and here's a new boat.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And that's great because end of the day, it'd be like someone leasing a car off a company, wouldn't it? And at the end of the day, if they don't pay for the car, then they get it took off them. So yeah, that totally understandable. Yeah, I really like what I hear, to be honest. Obviously, I'm not going to lie, I'm not really big into fishing and stuff like that. But this is one of the most unique projects I've actually heard, and you actually are the first projects I've actually heard of doing this sort of thing. There's loads of the like real estate ones coming out at the moment. But yeah, I haven't really heard anything about a lot of this sort of stuff. So really impressive, mate. Really impressive.
The uniqueness is the draw for me as well, for sure. It just seems really exciting, doesn't it? That's the thing.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I mean, it's exciting to me because like this is my life, right? Like I've been involved in naval architecture for a while now. I've been involved in crypto since I was in college, since before I was involved in this marine construction industry. So, yeah, it's my two hobbies basically. I get my full-time job is participating in my two favorite hobbies now. So I love it. I'm in favor of it. And you talk about the uniqueness and I want to talk about like first mover advantage, right? Back in the day when Bitcoin was around and Ethereum had just come out, smart contracts were unique. Smart contracts were not a thing that Bitcoin had. I believe they've been talking about it, right? But Ethereum, by being the first major blockchain to come out with smart contracts, gained first mover advantage in their industry. And as a result, Ethereum is the largest smart contract based blockchain that currently exists. Now, some people say it might be overtaken by Solana, it might be overtaken by Cardano, but so far that hasn't happened, even though you can argue that there's lower fees on some other platforms. So, why is that? It's because Ethereum had first mover advantage. They were the first ones to market with a very specific way of doing things. And so all of the use cases that fall into that category of being helped, in this case by smart contracts, went to Ethereum by default. So not only is it good that we're unique in that we're tokenizing floating assets, and there's many other projects, but they're all tokenizing land-based real estate. It also means that we are the first ones that are tokenizing floating assets. And so while the market share of all this land-based real estate can get split up among a bunch of different protocols, anything related to floating assets and their market share will all go, as of right now, they can only really go to us. We're the only guys in blockchain that are doing this. And that first mover advantage will probably have very big implications in the future.
It's a great way to put it. Yeah, first mover advantage. I like it.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with it. I'm definitely going to be looking at the sale tomorrow. Do you have to hold any of their tokens to join their launch pads? Do you know?
So for the first two that we did, I think they had something like a VIP round where you needed to hold their tokens in order to buy Stead at the lower price, at the pre-sale price. But the one that we're going to be doing tomorrow is open to absolutely everyone because we want everybody to have a chance to buy in. So on Bonsai, you don't need to hold any of their tokens. You can just show up and buy right away.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, man, I'm really excited about this. I'm definitely going to try and get in tomorrow anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's. Have you got anything else you'd like to add, or
I don't have anything else that I want to cover, unless the audience has any questions.
We've got a few requested, Scott, but I don't know how long they've been on there. Let's have a look. Shall I just approve and see how it goes?
Yeah, you can try and bring them up.
Let's see what happens. There we go. Lucifer, do you have a question for us? That sounds like a seance, doesn't it?
Get the Ouija board out.
Yeah. I don't think so. Who else we got? We have Renzel. Renzel, have you got a question? No, don't think so. Cecil, do you have a question for us? Come on, please be there, Cecil. Hello, Cecil?
Nah, to be honest, X Spaces, a lot of them, it never seem to come up. But yeah. To be honest, we are going to bring Stead back. I think, is it the 28th? We're going to have another AMA, mate.
Yeah, that's what I'm planning on.
Yeah,
so that'll be after launch.
Yeah. So if you've got nothing else left to touch on, obviously, if you drop a post, about the details of the launch pad tomorrow, let me know the link and I'll retweet it for you in a bit, mate.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much. And yeah, then that sounds great to me. So and by the way, I just want to thank everybody for coming in here today. I know some people aren't asking any questions just yet, but it's good to see people show up for these events.
Yeah, to be honest, mate, I'm not going to lie. A lot of Telegram groups at the moment are really quiet. It's really strange because Bitcoin's absolutely smashing it. I think once the domination of Bitcoin drops the dominance to altcoins, I think you're going to see a lot more people excited, and you're going to see a lot more activity with retail investors coming in as well. So I think give it a few months with the halving coming up. I think we're in for some fireworks.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I think, well, I mean, Bitcoin's been pumping more than ETH, I believe. So once ETH starts to pump, then the whole L2 ecosystem, Arbitrum, Optimism, Polygon, everything else is just going to follow that. At least that's what I think that I've noticed. I don't know exactly how like Cardano and Solana usually fit into that. I haven't been following, what their price usually does in reference to Bitcoin or Ethereum.
Well, that's the thing. Once it starts, the predictions kind of just go out the window, don't they? It's a crazy time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No one expected Bitcoin to go up to 69,000 last time and then back down to 16. So, no one can predict the future. But yeah, like you said, thanks to everyone that's joined today. Obviously, you could have been anywhere in the world, but you decided to join us. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next one.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for your time, Scott.
Thank you
Cheers,
very
mate.
much.
Have a good day.
Cheers.